Welcome to the Silver Linings Podcast with Joe Swinger, CEO and founder of the Silver Linings Network. Let Joe help you make the second half of life your best half by living the VIP life of vibrancy, impact, and purpose. Now here's your host, Joe Swinger.
Welcome to the Silver Linings Podcast. I'm Joe Swinger. Today we have another special guest, and we're going to be talking about the digital world and the world of social media. I recently left what I call corporate jail and started my own business and have done a lot online. And it could be pretty difficult navigating those waters with a lot of get-rich schemes and things like that. And that's what I want to talk about on today's show. You silver liners, as we enter the second half of life and we want to make something happen, leave the job, a lot of times we're willing to trade money for time to kind of catch up. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. My special guest is Kak Varley. He's the owner of kPod.com, a consulting agency specializing in extending businesses safely and successfully into the digital world. Kak has 35 plus years of combined sales, marketing, and business owner experience. And I love the slogan that he has. It's bringing value to the digital world. Welcome to the show, Kak.
Thank you. Well, pleased to be here.
Yeah, I'm so happy to have you. We talked a bit offline about a lot of the things in the digital world, and I know I've worked with you a little bit. And, for those of us that don't know you, why don't you start with just telling us how you got started in the digital marketing world?
Yeah, my journey is as crooked as anybody else, right? Because when I started as a kid, I wanted to be a rock star, and now you can see how that turned out. It's kind of an interesting story, and it really kind of begins with my career in sales because I was just a warehouse grunt for a long period of time because, again, I wanted to be a musician. So I always had the day job working in a warehouse, and at night I would go out and play shows, right? And, working hard at that. But then I was in a music warehouse doing some stock boy type stuff. And the salesperson there, he had a team of about 3 guys, came up to me and he said, "Hey, Mike's leaving. Would you ever consider doing sales?" And I said, "I don't know. Could I do sales? Do you think I could do sales?" And he said, and he looked me dead straight in the eye and he said, "Oh yeah, you could do sales." And I was like, all right. And it was one of those moments in time where you go, I could have been the guy that would have been giving myself every excuse as to why not to do that, right? Now, back in those days, just think about it. I was making $12,000 a year, right? I get on with the sales team over there, and all of a sudden I'm selling more than they are. And there begins my sales career, right? So did well with that, got into technology sales maybe a few years after that. I worked for a local outfit here out of Phoenix. And I was in technical sales for about 14 years. But during that time, I became a business owner. And it was in the retail space. We did copy scan business. And we were just 2 partners. And basically, my one partner handled all the things on site, like employment, operations, things of that nature. I handled everything that I could handle remotely, which would be your accounting, taxes, and of course, marketing, particularly digital marketing. So that's where I got my feet wet with digital marketing. And honestly, this was back in the times when MySpace was around, if you recall. And really Google was just beginning. So I fell in love with the digital marketing space and became friends with a local agency in town. And as it happened, I ended up leaving the technology business, ended up working for several other outfits on a technology basis, sales technology, or technology sales, should I say. And then ended up talking to this agency about me leaving to dive more heavily into the digital marketing world. And they said, "Well, why don't you just join us? You can be our sales guy," right? And that's where I got heavily into digital sales and all the ins and outs and understanding it, educating myself on that particular industry.
I like what you said about you could have made excuses because that's what many of us do. We make excuses why not to leave a relationship or a job or write that book. And, we have these self-limiting beliefs and imposter syndrome, and I'm not good enough. And I think when we're in the first half of life, we don't know any better. So we go and we do it. And that's why we have, failures and disappointments and all that in the first half. That really becomes our wisdom in the second half. And I like that about you. And by the way, I'll tell our friends here that you do play the guitar pretty well. So what made you leave what I call corporate jail in the second half of your life and start your own business and go down this path?
That's an interesting one. And I think my story is probably similar to everybody else, which is that, the corporate world is the corporate world. Now, I'm not taking anything away from it because it can be very good for people. There's no doubt about it. However, for me, I tend to be, how do you want to put it, autonomous as a person. I don't need a lot of help to get what I need done. Like, put it to you this way, in a corporate world, I'm your favorite employee because you don't need to manage me. And a lot of that comes back to owning businesses. When you own your own business, there's nobody except for the customer that you have to answer to. It's on you to get it done and get it done right. So I was always that kind of person that just did it right. And then you take into other, another aspect of it, which is, of course, I was in the sales arena. That world is very difficult in the corporate world because they're constantly changing your pay. They're always moving the cheese, right? And it's never in a positive way. It's always like, we're going to reduce your pay, we're going to take these things away, and we're going to ruin your reputation because we told you that we could sell something, we could deliver something that we can't. It's something like that, right? Because as I always say, those are the three things you never want to do to a salesperson. You don't want to wreck their pay, right? You don't want to wreck their reputation, and you don't want to wreck their spirit. Those are the 3 W's that I talk about.
Yeah, I totally know where you're coming from because I was the favorite employee for getting things done, for executing, but I was not the favorite for my attitude because I would let leadership know when things weren't going well or what we could have done better. And, like you, I don't think I was ever paid what I was worth. People would say how brilliant I was, and I would say, well, how come I'm not getting paid for it? And I think I would rather get paid less now, but get paid for what I do as a coach and an author and that kind of thing. So let me ask you, when we get into the second half, there's always more urgency to get things done. We see the time, first we hit the 40s and the 50s and, heaven forbid we hit the 60s and we're still in the corporate job like I was. And when we do make a break or we do a side hustle, we'll trade money to save time. And I spoke on that at the opening. There's so many charlatans and unethical people that are going to get you rich quick. Coaching, I know I get LinkedIn all day. They're going to show me how to get leads for a coach and how to get leads for my book. And so what do you think is some of the things that we can do to protect ourselves? Because there's a lot of people older who, they maybe haven't been exposed to the media and the social media as well. And, would just take a chance on people.
Yeah, you're really in my wheelhouse right now. First of all, there is no silver bullet solution, right? So first we have to recognize that. If it's too good to be true, it's probably too good to be true, right? In this world, we've been here long enough to know that everything takes work, right? We know that. It just so happens that we have to work for it no matter what. So what I would say to these people is, and I'll use an example. It's a great example because here's a guy that we both know, Joe, which is Jeffrey Hazlett. And I remember years ago approaching Jeffrey Hazlett because I wanted him to meet my CEO at the time. I was close with my CEO at this particular software company. And in actuality, what I was looking for him to do is to meet the CEO and possibly maybe do a speaking engagement, right? Because I had just met Jeff a month prior. His answer to me, because I reached out to him in LinkedIn, in Messenger, in the LinkedIn message. I said, hey, I'd like you to meet my CEO. Would you be open to talking with him? His answer to me was brilliant, and it changed my world. He just replied, how can we make money?
I love that.
Right? Because that's what it comes down to. So you triggered me into that story, because here's the deal. When you hear things like, I will get you 1,000 followers, I will get you this many leads, I will get you this many appointments, none of that ever says, I will make you this amount of money. And so if you want to converse with these people that want to do what I call, fluffy bunny rabbits and unicorns that come to you, then just approach them with, how much money am I going to make?
I love that, because you're right. They don't say that.
Right. Because business is just like this. This is the way I define business, right? It's getting business and keeping business. And by the way, you have to sell for more than what you're paying for. That's business.
For those of us that don't know, Jeffrey Hayeswood is the CEO of the C-Suite Network, a great friend of both myself and Kak, and we do belong to C-Suite Network, and I highly recommend it. I'm going to use that next time. Yeah. I love that answer.
And if you get a chance to read his book, or if you get a chance to talk to him, ask him about Kill the Squirrels, because that's what you're describing with the fan, what I call unicorns and fluffy bunny rabbits. He says kill the squirrels, right? The squirrels are the people that will take you off your game, waste a bunch of your time when you could have been making money.
He talks about that often. He is not fond of those kind of people.
Right.
So for the silver liners that are just starting out, kind of like where I was, what's the best way to get an online presence and getting started in social media without? I mean, there's so many different platforms. What's a good way to start?
Well, it starts before you get the online presence, which is make sure you have everything lined up with your brand, right? Make sure you understand your audience. So know yourself internally. That's what in my business, I call it the internal practice and the external practice. In the marketing world, they would call that branding and persona development. Okay. So take a look at your internal business, understand what you're doing, what you're trying to do, make sure your message is clear. Okay. Now, it doesn't have to be perfect either. I have a 80-20 rule of my own that says 80% of my world is dedicated to action. 20% of my world is dedicated to the 3 L's: look, listen, and learn. Then I take everything that I learned and I put it back into the action category. I think a lot of people overthink things, and their action is in the 20% and their consumption is in the 80%. So when I tell you this, what I want your audience to know is that you don't have to be perfect, but you do have to create some kind of foundation. Then externally, who is your audience going to be? And by the way, when I mean audience, it doesn't just mean who you want to sell to, because I'm quite certain we would all love to sell to every CEO on the planet, right? But then there's this reality. And the reality is that there's an audience that actually needs your help and wants your help. Once you've established that, then you can start getting into figuring out, what's going to be applicable to you online. Is it going to be a website? Likely. But which social media channels are going to be preferred? And right now, almost all of them are, to be quite honest, well, not all of them. Some are what we call amplification, things like Snapchat, TikTok. I don't advise towards that for businesses, because again, it's just a bunch of yapping and you don't actually own the content. It goes away. And so that's not going to help you in the long run, unless you have some short-term goals that would be applicable to those particular social media channels. But generally speaking, you do want to be on LinkedIn, you do want to be on Twitter, but every one of these channels has its way of going about things. So you have to make sure you understand that, so you don't end up, what I like to say is, over the tips of your skis. right? And then you look at Instagram and Facebook, and most of the time people would say, well, that's a consumer, those are consumer social media platforms. And yes, at the beginning, they very much were consumer. But Facebook, which also owns Instagram, I mean, they are putting all their energy into making that a business platform now. So more than and better, and not only that, I suggest that all business people, especially in the leadership, really get on those platforms. I know they're thinking right now, I don't really want to be on those platforms because, well, the business platforms are Twitter and LinkedIn, right? What I'm saying is, I can tell you firsthand. I mean, I get business from Instagram from other businesses. Now, granted, it's smaller businesses, but I get business from Instagram by doing all the right things and be engaging with businesses on that platform. So, but we also need leadership like the people you're speaking to get on these platforms to provide a better audience, because the algorithms are saying, well, if you only have a certain subset of population on there, that's the only audience you'll ever be able to get in front of in those applications. So I want people to get into those applications because I want to grow that population and be able to, let's call it what it is, market to them. Right?
Right. Hey, we're speaking with Kak Varley, a digital marketer who is the owner of kPod.com. And I want to bring up the topic of ads. I know you're a proponent of social media ads, and you hear so much about them, and they don't work, they cost a lot of money. How can we be effective without spending a ton of money, or worse, losing it? And is there some strategic way to go about it?
Yes, there is. Let's start with, it's interesting to me because I heard a guy say one time, a person will buy a $5,000 newspaper ad and not know if it was effective at all because it comes with no real reporting, and yet they won't spend $100 on a Facebook ad that tells you everything about what's working and what's not working. So I find that fascinating. So right out of the gate, I've just explained to you that Facebook advertising is far and away cheaper than your sort of physical world traditional advertising. It just is. Radio commercials, TV commercials, all that stuff it costs a lot of money. And you don't know if it actually worked unless you do some trickery like you create a whole new phone line so you can find out how many people call from that phone number. I mean, there's ways to track it, but it's certainly not as efficient as online marketing is. Now, here's a real good tip. First and foremost, don't listen to the social media programs in terms of how much you should spend. If you want to know what's working and you want to understand your audience better, like right now, I'll give you a great example. I'm doing this myself right now with an ad. I'm actually going through and I'm doing an ad. I'm boosting an ad for $4 for 4 days. So I call that my 444 program. So it's $4 for 4 days. Okay. I'm trying to find the audience that's going to be applicable to me. So I'm going through all the interest categories. So I'll pick an interest. For instance, I might say people interested in Forbes magazine, right? And I won't do anything else. I'll just do interested in Forbes magazine. I'll run the ad for $4 for 4 days, and then I'll start taking a look, not just at the numbers, but the kind of people that are liking my ad or engaging with my ad. Okay. And I have a long list of all these different interests that I believe would be my audience. And I just go through that cycle all the time. $4, 4 days. Okay. Did this work? No. Okay. Scratch it off. Okay. Go to the next one. Boom. Right. And now you're not spending, because it's typical. I hear it all the time. Oh, I spent $100 on the Facebook ad and it didn't work. Well, first of all, did you use an interest category? No, I didn't. Well, the thing is, how that works is, look, if my guy next door has dogs, which he does, I'm not going to try to sell him a cat. So why would I run an ad towards him? You know what I mean? I want to run an ad towards people that have an interest in what I'm selling. right? So the big tip here is you can start small. You do not have to spend $100, $50. You don't even have to spend $10. Now, it might become a situation later on as there's more competition for that ad space that Facebook raises their prices. But for right now, it is dirt cheap, especially because of this COVID stuff right now. They are doing ad space at almost half the cost of what they used to.
That's amazing. It's kind of like a strategic strike. Now, I'm probably dating myself, but I remember the old newspaper, 3 lines, $20, and you'd go ahead and put it, and you just sit there and wait for your phone to ring. I don't even think I had a cell phone.
Right.
But, what you were saying, I know people that did that kind of strategic in the dating life. You put up a photo and then see what kind of response you get to the photo, and then you change to another photo and that kind of thing. But
yeah, it's like catfishing. You could do catfishing too if you wanted to, although I don't suggest that. That's not being authentic. So
yeah, well, I'm not in that field right now. But so moving ahead, Kak, any projects coming up this year that you're excited about?
I do have a new project that I'm looking at, which is my own coaching program. It's going to be more around group coaching, and it's going to be relatively inexpensive. It's going to allow me to get in front of a group of people and coach, while the people in the group themselves will be able to help each other out with their experiences as well, along with some alternatives, or should I say some add-on components like a Facebook group for which we can do coaching through there and have a knowledge base and people helping each other out, particularly focused at the small person, maybe the solopreneur that wants to get their business off and running. And then, yeah, that's pretty much it for now. Anyways, I'm actually considering a book right now. I don't want to give away what that's going to be about, but I'm writing all the notes on that. I have my blog on the website that is all for people. It's all helpful information for people. I just started my K tips, which is my vlog. So if you want 2, 3, 5-minute tips on, digital marketing, you can go to my website there. And then eventually here, and I'm already starting my own podcast, which is going to be called Morning Clarity with a K. Everything in my world, because my name starts with a K.
Well, that's great. I mean, exciting stuff. And I mean, look at what you gave us today. I loved what you said about, the 3 L's and the 4x4 plan and a lot of great things. So how can we reach you if we want to, have you do some digital marketing or interested in your coaching and that kind of thing?
First of all, if you just look up Kak Varley, whether it be on Google or social media, you will find me. The second thing is my website, which is, again, Kak Varley, Kak, V as in Victor, ARLEY.com. It's
been great having you today, Kak. Any last words for us?
Oh, that sounds weird. Any last word? You don't want to be doing that in the Silver Linings Network here and saying any last words before we...
Yeah, I see where you're going with that.
No, I think it's all good. Hey, and if anybody wants my help, they can reach out to me. I'll give them my email right now, which is kak@kakvarley.com. That's KAK at KAK, V as in Victor, ARLEY.com. They can reach out to me. I'll be glad to answer any questions they might have.
I will validate what you've said, that I've spent some time with you. And if anybody's interested in digital marketing or being educated on going into that venue, Kak is your man because he's a wealth of knowledge. Hey, Kak, it's been great spending time with you. I hope everyone enjoyed the show. I'm Joe Swinger, and I'll see you on the next episode of the Silver Linings Podcast. Bye-bye.
Thanks for joining us on the Silver Linings Podcast with Joe Swinger. Remember to subscribe to this podcast on iTunes or wherever you like to listen. And to learn more about the work Joe Swinger is doing, visit joeswinger.com.